TR gasps for air as a paper cup of water inches toward his lips, paralyzed by something he can't see. He was never bitten. He never touched an animal. And he is dying of the one disease you're supposed to have to be bitten to catch. TR is a 28-year-old man brought to the emergency room with agitation, hypersalivation, and hydrophobia. Hydro, from Greek, meaning water, and phobia, meaning fear, a fear of water. But TR isn't afraid of water the way someone fears spiders or heights. Every time a cup nears his lips, the muscles in his throat seize so violently he can't breathe. He flinches at the light. He can't finish a sentence. Something is very wrong with his brain. 5 weeks earlier, TR was doing the thing he loved most. He was a wildlife biologist, and he had spent a long, exhausting day deep inside a limestone cave, surveying one of the largest bat colonies in the region. Millions of bats hung from the ceiling above him. The air was hot, humid, and thick, heavy with the smell of guano and the faint mist thrown off by millions of tiny breathing animals. He wore gloves. He was careful. No bat ever landed on him. Nothing ever bit him. He came home and thought nothing more of it. TR had done this kind of survey dozens of times before. It was the part of the job he loved most, counting roost sites, tracking the health of the colony, getting close enough to a species most people only fear to actually understand it. That evening, the whole colony lifted off at once, a black river pouring out of the cave mouth into the dusk, and he stood and watched it the way he always did, like it never got old. He did not know that the air itself can carry a death sentence. For 4 weeks, TR lived normally, unaware of the virus silently advancing within him. This is what makes airborne exposure so insidious. By the time anything felt wrong, the cave was a month behind him. A long day at work he had already half forgotten. There was no wound to point to, no single moment he could connect to what was coming. The virus had counted on exactly that, a silent head start measured not in hours, but in weeks. Then came the first symptom. And like everything about this disease, it was easy to dismiss. A tingling, crawling sensation across his face and scalp. Paresthesia, para meaning deviation, esthesia meaning feeling. A deviated feeling. He thought it was stress. Then came insomnia, a dread he couldn't name, a low fever his wife blamed on a cold. But within days, TR was confused, drifting mid-sentence, producing more saliva than he could swallow. When his wife handed him a glass of water, his throat slammed shut and his whole body convulsed. Terrified, she called 911, and TR was brought to the emergency room where we are now. At examination, doctors find fever, agitation, hypersalivation, and that telltale violent reaction to water. The brain is involved. The nerves are involved. The picture screams one diagnosis. The one hydrophobia points to like an arrow: rabies. The standard workup only deepens the mystery. Blood work, a CT scan of his brain, a lumbar puncture to sample his spinal fluid, almost everything comes back unremarkable. In early rabies, that is exactly what you would expect. Brain scans usually look clean until the very end. There is no single image, no lab value that stamps this diagnosis. It rests entirely on the clinical picture in front of them. But there's a problem. When doctors ask the obvious question, was he bitten, was he scratched? The answer from TR and from his wife is no. No bite. No scratch. No animal contact at all. And rabies, every textbook says, comes from a bite. So how does a man with no bite get the world's deadliest virus? The answer was something he never thought to worry about. And to find it, we have to go back into that cave. The answer was in the air of that cave. Rabies virus lives in the saliva of infected animals. And in a cave packed with millions of bats, that virus gets sprayed into the air in microscopic droplets, along with aerosolized particles from their droppings. The air TR breathed for hours was a fine mist of it. And the virus didn't need a wound. It entered through the moist lining of his nose and his airways, found the nerve endings there, including the olfactory nerves that run almost directly into the brain, and began to travel. Because here is what makes rabies extraordinary. The virus is shaped like a bullet, and once it reaches a nerve ending, it does something almost nothing else does. It avoids the bloodstream entirely, where the immune system patrols, and instead hijacks the nerve's own internal transport machinery, riding it backward toward the brain at roughly 1 to 3 centimeters per day. That slow, hidden crawl is why rabies can incubate for weeks or months with no symptoms at all. By the time TR felt that tingling on his face, the virus had already reached his brain, exploded in number, and begun pouring back out along his nerves into his salivary glands, driving the agitation, the hypersalivation, the inability to swallow. In a normal bite case, these aren't random symptoms. They're the virus's strategy to spread through saliva. TR's exposure was rarer and stranger. He simply breathed it in. And here is the cruelest part. There is a vaccine. There is a treatment. But it only works before symptoms begin. Had TR understood that spending hours in a dense bat cave counts as a rabies exposure, even with no bite, and gotten a series of shots called post-exposure prophylaxis, his immune system would have killed the virus while it was still crawling toward his brain. Almost 100% effective. But once symptoms appear, that window is gone. From that point, rabies is very nearly 100% fatal. By that measure, it is the deadliest virus on Earth. And airborne rabies is not a theory. In the 1950s, two men died after exploring a Texas cave called Frio Cave, home to millions of bats. They had no bites. Investigators were so disturbed that they ran an experiment, placing animals in cages inside the cave so they couldn't be bitten, only breathe the air. The animals still caught rabies. Lab workers handling aerosolized rabies virus have been infected the same way. The air in the wrong place is enough. That investigation took years to fully accept, because it broke a rule scientists had trusted for decades. No bite, no exposure. But once cage-isolated animals deep in the cave still turned up rabid, with the bats never able to touch them, there was no other explanation left. It remains one of the only confirmed examples of airborne viral transmission ever documented in nature. Researchers believe it takes a very specific combination: an enormous dense bat colony, poor airflow, and hours of continuous exposure. The exact conditions of TR's job, and the reason these cases turn up almost only in cavers, spelunkers, and wildlife biologists. For almost everyone else, rabies still arrives the old way, through a bite. TR was the rare exception that proves how completely the virus has mastered every route into us. Rabies still kills an estimated 59,000 people every year, mostly in Asia and Africa, mostly from dog bites, and nearly half of them children. And in 1885, before anyone understood viruses, Louis Pasteur saved a 9-year-old boy mauled by a rabid dog by giving him the first rabies vaccine, days after the bite, before symptoms. That boy lived. The same principle could have saved TR. But for TR, it was too late. By the time he reached us, the virus had saturated his nervous system. There was nothing to do but keep him comfortable. Within days, he slipped into a coma and his heart stopped. The diagnosis was confirmed after he passed. So protect yourself. If you are bitten or scratched by a bat, a raccoon, a skunk, a fox, or a stray dog, do not wait. But understand, too, that a bite is not the only way. If you wake and a bat is in your room, or you spend time in a cave full of them, treat it as an exposure and see a doctor. Post-exposure treatment is a medical urgency. You have days, not weeks, not months, days. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is the air itself. Subscribe before the next one finds you.